There's a lot of things that we would do. One of the things is we would get the owners of the business to sit down and help them plan it out. So without a plan, growth is really difficult. So yeah, it's having a bit of well, we call it a strategic objective, but it's a document that's sort of the highest level. And what you do is you put a bunch of things in there, including the growth, and then we sort of would pressure test it and say, well, if you want 500, why, Kyle? Why do you want 500? Why is it not 512 properties? Or why is it not, 826 properties? Why is that? So, and then we start delving into that a little bit. And once we understand and they understand, more importantly, okay, well, this is what it sort of needs to look like in X number of years, then it becomes quite easy to put a plan in place and say, well, acquisition points could be here and here. And then, business development people, we need to look at the level of quality managements coming in and the volume of those each month to be able to achieve it, and then start to work with them to make sure, as we said, that the profitability remains high. And that's directly related to efficiency.
Welcome to the Property Management Podcast. I'm Kylie Walker. Thank you for having me in your ears. Now, before we dive into this episode, can I ask one really small favour of you? If you know somebody that is struggling in the industry right now and needs a little extra support, I'd love it if you could share the podcast with them. I would be forever grateful for your support. Now, today's topic is something that I have been asked about a lot lately, and it's what's stopping your rent roll from growing. And here's the thing. Rent roll growth is what every principal, BDM and property management team wants, right? It's what builds long-term value, boosts profitability, and keeps the business thriving. But for so many out there, growth feels stuck. And maybe you've tried different strategies, but it just isn't coming together. Or maybe you're overwhelmed by all the challenges that seem to come with scaling up. That's why I've brought in an expert. I'm so excited to have Nathan Brett from Real Estate Dynamics on the podcast. Nathan has spent years helping agencies grow their rent rolls, and he's seen it all, the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. And if there's anyone who knows why growth stalls, and more importantly, how to fix it, it's Nathan. We're going to dive into some really juicy topics today, starting with the basics, like what are some of the different ways to grow? And sure, we all know about buying a rent roll or growing organically, but Nathan's got some really interesting ideas about other paths to grow that might not be on your radar. Then we'll also get into a question that might make you pause. Wouldn't everyone want to grow? And you'd think so. But the truth is, not every agency is ready or even willing to go after growth, whether it's fear of change, lack of confidence, or just feeling stuck in the day-to-day. We're going to talk about what holds people back and how to shift that mindset. And of course, we can't talk about rent roll growth without addressing attrition, the silent killer of growth. Nathan has some eye-opening stats about how many properties are typically lost each year and what you can do to reduce that churn. And let's not talk about the topic of staffing. We've all seen how high turnover in property management can throw a spanner in the works. Nathan calls it the sticky staffing dilemma, and we'll talk about how building the right team culture can make a huge difference to your growth efforts. We're also going to take a peek into what the best rent rolls are doing to grow consistently. And spoiler alert, it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter, from leveraging relationships with landlords to staying ahead with technology and understanding your numbers and what the data is telling you. So whether you're just starting to focus on growth or trying to push past a plateau, you'll come away from this episode with ideas that you can put into action right away. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's get real about what's stopping your rent roll from growing. Nathan, welcome to the Property Management Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, before I dive in, can you share with our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely, Kylie. So I'm the CEO of Real Estate Dynamics, and our business has been operating for 21 years. And we help owners of property management businesses across Australia either grow or sell their rent rolls. Getting started, I kind of fell into it 30 odd years ago, I suppose. I was working for someone in the eastern suburbs of Brisbane in a pretty busy, high-performing real estate agency, and that was part-time while I was going to uni, and then flipped that around and finished my degree at night and started working full-time for the principal, who became my business partner. So I kind of got interested in this whole property management rent roll thing, and I must admit we weren't doing a very good job at the time, but slowly and surely we broke down every process and looked at things a little bit differently, started to build the systems, and yeah, we grew that property management business from 230 to 1,010 in 10 years, and then I sold it back to him. So the perfect crime, some might say.
That's amazing. Amazing journey. And so what led you then into starting Real Estate Dynamics? What was the gap in the market or the solution you were looking to solve by starting Real Estate Dynamics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wasn't one of the founding directors. I'd had a year and a half off after selling the business and was traveling and traveling through and living in Europe. And then, yeah, came back and thought, gosh, I better start earning some money again. And we'd used Real Estate Dynamics historically for our training for our property management people. And I think we'd had an acquisition through them to purchase a small rent roll as well. And the founding directors they were looking to retire. So yeah, that's became of interest. I sort of went in for a job interview and came out with an offer to buy out the business over a number of years. So that's kind of how that worked, Kylie.
Amazing. Now we're talking about rent roll growth, and that is the thing on everybody's mind. Everybody in property management wants to grow their rent roll, right? Now you can obviously buy a rent roll or you can grow organically. What are your thoughts around that? Which one's better, which one's not? And are there any other ways to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a question we get asked a lot. Probably the net reality is that both of them are very important. And it's really dependent on the business owner's vision of the property management business. And, I often ask leaders, why do you have a rent roll? What purpose does it serve? What do you want it to look and feel like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And by sort of asking a few of those strategic questions, I suppose we can guide them towards, well, yeah, let's have a look at smart acquisition. So you want to buy and continue to be profitable. Organic growth is wonderful as well as an addition to that, given the attrition rate. I just had a look in our data warehouse before we started the recording, and it's 17.4% per annum.
So that's
So
properties lost off the bottom of the rent roll every year.
So that's in our data warehouse, and it's taken from a various number of sources across Australia, a lot of the consultancy work we do, and our rent roll sales. So yeah, for every 100 that you have under management, 17.4 of those are going to disappear every year. So
That's a lot.
yeah,
That's a lot of growth you need just to match the attrition rate, let alone then achieve the growth goals that you might be setting for your business, isn't it?
yeah, that's exactly right. And certainly, I think it's fair to say a number of property management businesses across Australia have had negative growth over the past couple of years, particularly with some investors being or deciding to sell their investment property. And you know how it goes, that gets sold to an owner occupier, and suddenly that property is removed at that point in time from the rental market.
Yeah. And is it the case that everybody wants to grow? Or what are you finding with the people that you work with? Because obviously they need to grow to cover that attrition rate. But do people get to a point? I mean, I'm not one of those people. I'm always, what's next, what's next? But do people get comfortable and just when they hit their goals, are they happy?
Yes and no. So it's a bit like if you picture a cyclist, the cyclist that we see around town, balancing on the pedals at the stoplights. And they can do that for a period of time, but eventually they've either got to go forward or backwards. And that's exactly what happens in rent rolls. You just can't stay stationary. One of those two things is going to happen. Probably more so, Kylie, when we see a leader hit their goal, a property management business owner, that's usually when they're deciding to sell and, go on to the next chapter. But until then, yeah, it's very, very hard to stay stationary in
Yeah.
our line of work. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, this is just a question, I guess, that I'm just thinking, because I've just sold my rent roll. And what is the best point for somebody to sell a rent roll? Is it obviously you want to sell when you're in a good position and not out of desperation. But yeah, do you have some advice around when you should be looking to sell and maybe even what you should be preparing to get to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So such an, as you would have experienced, it's a fairly interesting transaction. So it's not like buying a house where you've perhaps got someone who's an emotional seller. They've lived there for X number of decades, raised the kids there, all that sort of stuff, perhaps. And then, the buyer's falling in love with various aspects. In rent roll sales, there's often an emotional seller because, they've worked really hard to build what they've got. And then you've got a commercial buyer who's really interested in the numbers and how it looks when they plug that into their existing rent roll. So there's not a perfect time, but what we try to do is help business owners remain profitable for the entire life cycle of their rent roll. And some will sort of vacillate between being in profit mode, not making profit, being in profit mode, not being in profit as they grow. We'd prefer to work with them and just find out and help them along that journey by trying to keep the business at a maximum yield or profit for its complete life cycle. And in that respect, we feel then that the business owner can make a decision at any time when it's time to go to whatever the next chapter is for them. So you certainly don't want to be in a heavily downward spiral when you are thinking to sell. Yeah, it's the old saying, get out on top if you can. But if you always try to stay on top, then you're probably going to get exceptional value there. We would suggest.
Yep, beautiful. And what would you say prevents a rent roll from growing? What are the key things there?
So efficiency is a big killer. It's a killer for profitability and it's a killer for growth. And that is having a business that could be people dependent. So not having a systems driven business where, it might be easier to replace a team member if they decide to exit left, so to speak. Another one is just the overall ability to absorb the growth. And we often ask principals, what would you do, Kyle, if we put another 220 rentals on your doorstep this afternoon? And a principal might say, yeah, great, terrific, bring it on. Or they might say, actually, hell no, there'd be mass resignation, we wouldn't have a business left. So the second means that there's probably not scalability built into that organization as well. And it's a little bit like if you're renovating a house and you think, well, what we'll do is we'll go up another level. And what you've got to do is make sure the foundations are right before committing to that. And the same with rent roll, if you've got all the foundations in place to be able to absorb that growth. Otherwise, it could become a nightmare.
Yeah, I've been in that situation and it is a nightmare. So, yes. And speaking of that nightmare and mass resignations, and it's still an issue in property management, that high turnover of staff. And that really does, and I can definitely attest to the impact it has on your business and your rent roll growth when you are constantly having that turnover. So what are some of the impacts that you have seen at Real Estate Dynamics when businesses just cannot keep a team together?
Well, it affects the whole business. So it's really, and it sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but few people slow down to realize the ramifications when there's a churn of team members. So when there's a churn of team members, we would also often see a churn of clients. So without sticky team members supporting the brand, there's certainly a lack of sticky clients. So some of them can follow an exiting team member to another agency. There's usually a lack of profitability as well because the cost of hiring is just so expensive, and having a great onboarding process and giving that new team member absolutely all of the tools and resources they need to be able to become exceptional in the role. So yeah, hugely expensive if we don't get it right, because you just keep, yeah, shedding profit on looking at hiring and onboarding new team members. So there's some of the big ramifications, and culturally it's pretty dangerous for everyone inside and outside the organization. I mean, as a principal, you'd know, Collie, there's nothing worse than hearing, oh, I was dealing with such and such, but they're not there anymore, and it's sort of like, oh, and that people dependency is a little bit dangerous, I think, as well.
And to be honest with you, that is one of the reasons I sold my rent roll, was just the lack of sticky staff. I just could not hold on to anyone, and it was becoming a real drain. And I couldn't blame anyone else. I had to look at myself and what I was contributing to that. And the reality was I'd lost my love and passion, and I wasn't being the leader that they needed. I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the business. And I had to, make that decision that, enough's enough. It's not fair on anyone. And I definitely damaged my profitability every time there was a churn. I think I had like 6 people through last year.
Yep.
And then I still managed to sell, but it definitely wasn't at the point it was 12 months ago to sell it. So, and I probably held on too long. That's probably the lesson there. And you probably see that a lot with other people that you deal with, that they hang on to it for too long. But sometimes you've just got to let go, haven't you?
Look, absolutely. And look, well done for realizing that. It is a tough one, and I've been through that as well. So our goal was 1,000, and it was only 1,000 because I knew the profitability and the asset value, and that was what I wanted it to be. But then, of course, you sort of think, well, could I just change gears and go to another 500, another 1,000, another whatever it might be? But yeah, I think at that time that I'd lost the passion for it as well. So I totally understand that, and it's a big and tough decision to make, but probably the right one when you realise, that 1 foot out the door rings a bell with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your advice then to anyone that's wanting to grow, and obviously you work with a lot of people, a lot of rent rolls. So what is some of the best things that people are doing in terms of growth, and I guess maybe the growth of their asset value? Because there are little things and tweaks that you can do rather than adding more managements into the pool. There's other ways that you can grow that asset value without needing more managements.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So there's a lot of things that we would do. One of the things is we would get the owners of the business to sit down and help them plan it out. So without a plan, growth is really difficult. So it's having a bit of well, we call it a strategic objective, but it's a document that's sort of the highest level. And what you do is you put a bunch of things in there, including the growth, and then we sort of would pressure test it and say, well, if you want 500, why, Kyle? Why do you want 500? Why is it not 512 properties? Or why is it not, 826 properties? Why is that? So, and then we start delving into that a little bit. And once we understand, and they understand, more importantly, okay, well, this is what it sort of needs to look like in X number of years, then it becomes quite easy to put a plan in place and say, well, acquisition points could be here and here. And then, business development people, we need to look at the level of quality of quality managements coming in and the volume of those each month to be able to achieve it. And then start to work with them to make sure, as we said, that the profitability remains high. And that's directly related to efficiency. So inefficient operations just swallow property management profits. So that's one way that you can certainly boost. And we've seen a huge amount. Actually, I was just looking at one of our diagnostics before that we run with agencies who reach out and say, hey, we just need a little bit of help because, we're not making money, or whatever the situation might be. And we combine the profit and loss with some measurement tools. And, this agency that I'm referring to is spending currently $187,000 a year just on repairs and maintenance. So you sort of start to add up all the operations and what it costs to do one maintenance job, then what it costs to do all the maintenance jobs every year, and same with all the other operations, and it's considerable. So chipping away at efficiency, how can we do it better, faster, easier, and cheaper is certainly one great way to grow.
Can I just ask how you do that? How are you, like, just if I was a client and I've come to you and I've said, look, my expenses are too high. I'm how do I know what my cost of sale is per management? Yeah, just, give me, like, I love this kind of stuff. And I didn't understand it until my later years in business, but for the first few years, I had no idea why that even mattered. But yeah, if you can maybe just give us some of the little nitty gritty stuff there. I'm super excited to share today's podcast sponsor, HD&U, with you. Having met Stuart Hayes and worked with him on the show, I know firsthand how passionate he is about transforming workplace dynamics for real estate teams. With decades of expertise, HD&U creates unparalleled team experiences that elevate both well-being and performance. They make leadership simpler, smarter, and more effective by focusing on the needs of people and the goals of the business. HD&U doesn't just develop leaders, they build empowered, cohesive teams that truly understand how to work together for maximum impact. Whether it's streamlining processes, boosting morale, or unlocking new levels of productivity, HD&U equips real estate leaders with the tools to lead with confidence and clarity. Hallelujah, that sounds amazing to me. Experience the future of team success with HD&U, where better work really does begin. And here's something special for That Property Mum listeners. HD&U is offering an exclusive team and culture-focused survey, complete with an analysis and a one-on-one debrief with Director Stuart Hayes, all for an incredible price of just $750. Head to the show notes to find out more.
Sure, it's a bit complicated even for me because we've got, and not that I'm a rocket scientist by any means, but we've got a data analyst who sort of built all of this stuff in the background. But ostensibly, what we do is we get all of the profit and loss, and we look at the expenses in the business, and then we work out what the cost is per head in property management per year. And then we start by taking some other measurements that we've got in our data warehouse, but the agency will actually measure some time frame. So, Kylie, in your business, how long does it take to do one maintenance job? And then we can kind of equate that back to the cost of head and then work out what one maintenance job takes, what 10, 20, 50, 100 a year's worth take. And then we can benchmark that and say, actually, that's a bit high. So we need to have a look at a way to streamline that a little bit better. And it could be all sorts of things that are behind those numbers as well. So geographical spread is a really big one as well. And I think every property management business owner and every property manager realizes that when your bottom's on a seat and you're driving somewhere, you're not really making any money. So you don't want to be driving too much all over the countryside and back and forth, because that can really chew up a lot of efficiency and therefore profit as well.
Yeah. So I think as business owners, you get so busy running the business and running the teams that you can kind of stick your head in the sand and not really understand your numbers. But you've just highlighted, and I think that's what I love about data. Like, it tells a story. It paints the picture. It tells you what's really going on, and then you can address that. And I'm assuming you guys have the strategies then in place to support businesses. So maybe just share some of the stuff that you guys do to support businesses at different stages of their rent roll journey, from, I guess, startup to scaling to selling.
Yeah, absolutely. So through there's sort of, we call it the golden triangle. We've got our brokerage and acquisition services, our training services, and our consultancy services. And so I guess startup businesses, and there are a lot out there as well. In fact, I was just speaking to a leader yesterday who made the decision, which was a fairly bold one. He hadn't been in the industry previously. And so he just went out and bought just over 1,000 managements to begin the journey. Now, that requires a fair bit of capital. But what was interesting is he said, I don't know how to start this thing, so I'm just going to go out and buy the skill. And there was a extremely high-performing department manager, long-serving team, loyal. So there's a bit of change management. So you might start there, and then you might start with another business owner saying, I'm going to start out tomorrow and start growing the rent roll. And we say, well, let's see what it looks like starting from zero, and let's see what it might look like starting if you could, say, acquire, and just using random numbers, 70, 80 or 90 properties to get started. And what you've done is you've already bought revenue, so it's instantly in profit mode. So that's sort of startup services, and we've got training and consulting that would support that. And then probably, we help a lot of leaders that just hit that glass ceiling. And I know I've been there over the years. I remember, I think it was about 500 for us. That seems to be a common number, Kylie, if that
Yes, that was,
resonates with
yep,
you.
yep.
Where you sort of just feel like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, and it's like, well, we're growing a little bit, but we're shedding some as well. And it's sort of like, oh, so frustrating. So yeah, really changing gears and doing things quite, I guess breaking through that glass ceiling is something that we would help with as well to get to the next level, wherever that may be. And of course, coming time to sell, I just spoke again with another a business owner who's looking at selling in excess of 2,200, but they don't want to sell for 18 months. And she reached out and said, look, I just need to know what you guys are going to recommend that we do in the next 18 months to make sure that it's in premium condition to get an exceptional value when it comes to it. So yeah, they're kind of a few different stages and everything in between. So there's no right number, no rhyme nor reason. Sometimes it's totally dependent on the leader's energy and, how much they can tolerate. Sometimes from, we've all been in the stage where we've got a landlord yelling at us or a tenant screaming at us, and sometimes we just have a bad day or a bad week, but hopefully we don't have too many of them.
Yeah, no, that's so true. What about, let's cast, I guess, the crystal ball forward into 2025. And if it's an agency owner that's maybe struggled with growth this year and they really want to hit their goals next year, what advice or what can you recommend for them to do to make sure that they hit the ground running?
Well, that's a really good question to ask. So I'd probably get clear about, if I was a business owner, what I want it to look and feel like, and really take some time to write down some things that almost help to, I mean, that's sort of part of the vision, is to actually visualize it. What does it look like and how many people, what does this produce? And, if I do have sales and property management, how can they be very integrated to form, and support each other? Which is great for businesses who have the fortune of having both of those. And from there, I'd think about, well, I'd start measuring things, Kylie. So that attrition, the average is 17.4. Is that correct in your business? How many managements did you lose last year? And if possible, find out two things. Why did you lose them? Which means, an owner sold or an owner moved back in, or an owner went to a competitor. And so that's where they went, but why did they go is another question as well. So, if it was service delivery related, well, and I guess I wouldn't major on making anything perfect, but you just want to think about having, some of the right foundations in place so that you can grow. And then think about, well, okay, business development, and that's just sales for property management. So do I have the right person or people to be able to support that? And do I have the right support for the property management team as well? We work heavily with officers who provide a huge amount of administration support for PM people, to be able to speak to more landlords and tenants every day than getting bogged down in, a lot of the administration support. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously, and it's not a selling job for us, but any of our team are delighted to just have a confidential conversation with anyone. It's what we do every day, and to help point them in the right direction. And just remember as well that, rent rolls aren't for everyone. We didn't finish real estate school and God said, well, they must have a rent roll, nor does every property management business have a sales business attached to it either. So it's, as a mile wide as each business owner wants, I suppose. Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of the industry, right, at the moment, or in the last few years. Maybe it's post-COVID, I'm not sure. But there is it's not traditional real estate anymore. There's, people, working mums that have gone out, property managers, and, have started their own rent rolls, and they've got small rent rolls, under that 100 mark. Then you've got, I work with a lot of property management only businesses now, and then you've got sales only businesses, and I think that's just loving seeing how the industry is evolving and changing. And for anyone starting a property management business and having that asset to grow. And I was working with one of my clients the other day, and she's now grown her rent roll and she's earning over $200,000 a year. And she said, there's no job I could do even if I went to uni. There's not a lot of jobs that I could do that would be, unless I'm a lawyer, surgeon, whatever, that would be paying me that amount of money every year. And that's her take home money. And I'm like, and she's, like I said, a working mum, and that's her super fund when she goes to sell it at the end of the day.
Yeah, terrific. And that's, I think, what got me excited, Kylie. It's kind of like, how can you have this business? They're so weird and unique in that respect that can generate great revenue and good profit if you run them well, but also have an excellent asset value. It's sort of like, where do we get that?
It's utopia.
It is, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it
Don't
is.
let the secret get out too much.
No, I know. Oh, well, it's good for businesses like ours, though, where we can help and support people who are looking to grow and sell rent rolls. So, yeah, it is. And I absolutely love it. Now, I love personal development, and I get our guests. We have a tradition. We get guests on to share a tool, resource, book, or a podcast that you think will help our listeners. What have you got for us?
Yeah, well, I'm a massive reader, and I've got a pretty extensive library. I think for business development people, when it comes to rent roll growth or anyone who's tasked with rent roll growth, there's probably 3 books that would be my favorites. Well, pretty much anything by Stephen Covey, in my opinion, is fantastic, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is an essential read. And actually, I just looked it up earlier because I'm thinking, gosh, when was that published? I'm sure I got that so many years ago, and it was 1989. But it's still, I would read it at least once every 18 months or brush through it. I think that one's a really good one. Jeb Blunt's Fanatical Prospecting, in my opinion, is an excellent book as well. And he's a serious bloke when it comes to prospecting, which, all of us have some sort of hesitation around. But I found that to be excellent to just help me over the years get back into that right lane of prospecting. And I also like Tom Hopkins, When Buyers Say No. That's really great on objection handling. I think that's a terrific book also, Kylie. Yeah. So there's 3 that I'd recommend.
I haven't read the last 2, and I do struggle with hearing no and rejection. So I'm going to go grab those books. I'm not sure if you've heard of an app called Headway.
I have.
Yeah. Well, I've just been, so it just summarizes books, and I was just that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I just had that on my Headway the other day driving to gym in the morning. So, so it was a great reminder. And in real estate, that's the business we're in, is building relationships, isn't it? So,
absolutely. And it's never been any different. So, which is great. What a great industry we're in.
It is. Now, how can our audience connect with you further? What's the best way for them to reach out to yourself or Agent Dynamics?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website's realestatedynamics.com.au. Our head office number's 1300 734 596. If you want to email me personally, it's a big one, I'm afraid. So Nathan Brett at realestatedynamics.com.au. And delighted to have a chat.
Beautiful. I will share all of those links in the show notes. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me. I loved connecting with you.
It was great to be here, and thanks for having me too, Kylie.
If you're ready to be a super organised, focused and productive property manager, buckle up, because Colmio is about to revolutionise the way that you work. Colmio is the driving force behind property management excellence in residential real estate. Now picture this, a comprehensive end-to-end system designed to be the beating heart of your property management tasks, manage your properties, owners and tenants, and handle payments, inspections, and even marketing listings without leaving the platform. Colmio is designed to be an all-in-one solution to all your property management needs. And here's the game changer. Colmio isn't just software. It's been awarded the most innovative prop tech scale up in 2023. Yes, you heard it right. Colmio has been recognised for their groundbreaking approach to property management software. How good is that? So property managers, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, dive into the future of property management with Colmio. You can book in a demo with the team today and go in their weekly draw for a Prezi gift card worth $100. All you need to do is to head to the link colmio.com/thatpropertymum. And Colmio is Colmio,
Can I ask you a quick favour before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.